There's two teams I don't know very well, though, in this list. I don't know Saigon Buffalo that much, and I don't know CFO that much. Did you watch those regions?
Saigon Buffalo, yeah, that's Hazmed, right? The Gwen Andy?
I don't know, I didn't check any of their games. I haven't watched them at all.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Saigon. I think their 80s, their bot lane, and their bot lane is definitely strong. The rest will probably get gapped by like really top team players.
Their bot lane strong?
Yeah, it's Shogun and Taki.
Yeah, because I think Worlds is going to be a top side meta. I think Worlds is like... The thing is, for context, a lot of people, like... I think, to be honest, this Worlds is pretty easy to do tier lists, right? You just put top esports, JDG, and Genji in S tier. A tier, then you move to like... who would you move to in A tier? Maybe like EDG, T1 area. You know, B tier, you can put things like Damwon and RNG, maybe an A tier or B tier, depending on what your opinion on that series was. Am I missing teams here? No, I'm not. You know, you can have like DRX here, C9 around here. Like, I feel like if I open up people's tier lists, T1 EDG, he dropped RNG1, Rogues in B tier with Damwon, basically just changed this and put Fnatic down because they're playing team, right? I feel like it's pretty easy to do a tier list on their strength of what you saw. But I don't know if you share this opinion, M0xxy, but from what I've seen from like bot lane changes and top lane changes, I made this video about how I feel like Worlds is going to be a top-centric meta, and maybe more roaming mids come in, because like champs like Azir also got nerfed, Ahri got a small nerf, bot lane champs got nerfed, Zeri's nerfed, Kalista got nerfed, Draven got a small touch, I think, and then basically top-side champs got buffed. And also if it goes to a carry jungle meta, right, with like Graves and Hecarim being buffed, then I think that you need roaming supports. Yuumi is the only exception with things like Hecarim, right? But you need roaming supports, and you need like prio mids, which is like Galio.
Does that mean
that
Tom and Jerry episodes
support
to watch
Karma
with
mids,
chat when streamer is asleep?
Ryze can work as well.
Sting.
So you can help cover his camps or 3-man dive or just contest early crabs. So when I do my tier list, I'm going to do it based on what I expect the team's form to look like coming into a different meta from the playoffs that they're playing on. All right, worst to best, bot to top. We'll start with the bottom tier teams. So what's a team which is probably the weakest in group stage right now that's locked group stage? I won't count Fnatic and Mad. Actually, yeah, we will count Fnatic and Mad. We'll count Fnatic and Mad. Who would I put in... I'll save E tier as like the play-ins tier, or like the bottom play-ins tier. So I'll start with D tier, I think. It feels wrong to put group stage teams or expected group stage teams in E tier. All right, 100 Thieves, EG... come to mind. C9 are the NA teams. Fnatic, Mad are like the bottom tier EU teams. RNG is the 4th seed from LPL, but I don't think this team's a D tier team. I actually think they're like RNG is one of the teams where they got kind of, I don't want to say unlucky, but they got reverse swept like twice, didn't they, or something almost not even make Worlds. So I think that the 4th seed as RNG is a bit of a bait. I would say the worst team right now in group stage, given the meta, probably Fnatic. Feels wrong to say that though. Fnatic or Mad?
Out of all the, yeah, probably. I put those are good. Those are good bets.
Yeah, I feel like those two are. Because the thing is, if you don't say Fnatic or Mad, you could also say DRX, which I think is just a small step above, right? I also think Rogue is not one of the strongest teams at Worlds. I personally think, I don't know how Rogue's going to do, because I think Rogue is so reliant on their bot lane, and the way playoffs went for Larson was perfect. Like, this guy had a mage meta against Humanoid, and then he had a little bit of an Azir Ahri finals, didn't he? Did you watch the LEC playoffs and finals?
I missed a lot of them. I saw the bit of the finals and the Rogue versus Fnatic.
Oh yeah, Rogue versus Fnatic. That was the 3-1 Humanoid Sylas. Sylas is permabanned. I also would put 100 Thieves in here as a discussion point. I don't know how EG would do. But these are it's EU and NA, right? And DRX, which I think are the weaker teams. The thing is, the 4 LPL teams, I think, are actually quite close, and LPL will destroy. The LCK teams, I think DRX is the worst of them all. They're super inconsistent. But Damwon to me is the team which I actually think will do better than expected at Worlds. I would put them in like a B or A tier. And G2, I think I would put over Rogue, actually. I'm going to brainstorm. I'm not going to do bot to top and like talk about each team individually. I'm just going to do it, and then we can just talk about it. So I think T1 has, I don't know, I think G2 Damwon is probably around here. JDG and Top Esports are easily first. EDG, I think, are really bot-centric reliant. Well, not super reliant. I think Flandre is, I'll just put this here, and then Genji's here. So now I have to fix the bottom of the pack. Oh yeah, RNG. How do we fix the bottom of the pack? I didn't watch much EG games because they got knocked out. How was EG? Were they... All I remember watching is the EG series. They played against, who was it? TL, I think?
Aren't they playing with their sub ADC?
Yeah, they were. But they were also playing against TL. And I remember watching that series, and it was horrible to watch. Both AD carries were just misplaying so hard. Was that the Danny Seraphine series? It wasn't the Danny Seraphine, it was the Danny MF series. Oh, the Danny Seraphine series, was that against TSM? Yeah, those were messes. How's Impact been in the LCS? Is he good?
Probably the best top laner, maybe next to Fudge. I rate Fudge highly, personally.
Yeah. And Someday, is he...
I feel like if he's target banned, it's not the same caliber. There's like Ornn's banned. If his what other champs is he
Gwen?
like highly known for? Gwen.
Gnar, something like this? Yeah, I'm looking at the finals here. He played Fiora twice. But Fudge has been like...
Yeah.
Fudge and... You would say Fudge and Impact are the best two tops?
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking... I think Fudge is playing really well. I personally think Berserker is probably the best player in NA. I think Fudge is up there, though.
I think that's pretty undisputable.
Yeah, I think C9 is really well-rounded. I would actually put C9 maybe... C9, who's in their group? It's C9, T1 EDG, right? Yeah, C9, T1 EDG. And they can get Fnatic probably, right? Wow, this list is actually harder than I thought. I thought like world tier list, yeah, that'll be piss easy. I think the S tier is locked. JDG, Top Esports, Gen G. Even if the meta changes, these three are still the three favorites to win worlds. JDG have 369. I think Wayward has been really good. Gen G is the only one which I'm unsure about because they have Ruler and is the only team that I would drop. But because overall, Peanut had probably the best split of his life. Chovy is never inconsistent. I would still put them there. Even though I think Doran is the weakest link and top lane there is probably the weakest link. I still think Gen G is the undisputed S tier. Would you say that there's another team or a remove there on S tier? Or is you think that's
I think that's pretty solid. I would be very surprised those are not top 4 teams.
Then we'll work our way down. Because then A tier, what's below JDG, Top Esports, Gen G? I think T1 is definitely there. Zeus is probably the second best top at this tournament. I think it's 369 Zeus.
Then Doran, then Flandre, I think. I don't really rate Flandre that highly, especially like last year's world performance versus Khan, even though he shit stomped Khan. But like I watched both the pro views, they did not look very good, either of them.
You think Flandre then Doran or Doran then Flandre?
Doran then Flandre.
You think
Breed Breed's in here? Oh no, yeah. Breed's third then.
So then 369, Zeus, Breathe.
Oh, and Wayward.
Wayward, yeah.
Dude, they're... Oh man.
Then probably Flandre, Doran. So I think the Flandre, Doran is scraping 5-6. Flandre, Doran is scraping 5-6. Nuguri, the thing is with Nuguri is that's why... The thing is, okay, let me give the Damwon thing because I watched I think almost every Damwon series. The problem Damwon had was Nuguri was getting subbed in and out towards the end. That's why a lot of people were like, maybe Nuguri shit. And I think he's not the best top laner this tournament easily. He's not even in the top 5. The problem with Nuguri is he's just so coin flip. And the other problem with Nuguri is that this split, it was very tank heavy. So when I open up Nuguri's Games of Legends, you'll see his most plays are things that is not really Nuguri champs. You go back to like season 9 when it's like a Jace, Vlad, Klepto, Camille meta, Kennen, that's his bread and butter. Season 10, exact same thing. But season 12, he's been forced to like play things like Sejuani and Gnar and GP. It's not like his comfort in playoffs. He was playing a bit of carries towards the end. That's why he looked better. But before that, this guy would pick Sejuani. He would dive the enemy top laner, die, and then proceed to die like 6 times after that because he just pushes sides and just keeps inting. I think people are too harsh on Nuguri. I don't think he's as bad as people say he is coming into this tournament. And especially if the top lane champ pool changes a little bit, I think he'll be fine. I think you can either come into this tournament and say Damwon sucks, Nuguri sucks, or you can come into this tournament and say, you know what, I think Damwon is probably going to be a dark horse and maybe Nuguri steps up depending on how the meta goes. That's why I'm putting them a bit high. You know, because I'm on the other side of the coin. But yeah, I think he's like 7th, 8th best top at the tournament. RNG EDG. How would you rate RNG EDG? See, to me, they're so close.
I think I would put RNG higher than EDG, just solely off of Flandre and JJ. I think I really prefer RNG's Breathe and Ways topside, and Gala Viper kind of on the even side for me.
It's hard. I think RNG is even or slightly bit better than EDG. And it sounds really weird to say that because of bot lane. And I think a lot of people will look at EDG and say like they have the best AD at the tournament. They have like Scout his playoffs was okay, and not playoffs. His regionals was fine. It's not like he was popping off or carrying or stomping. Scout was just okay. Whereas I think Xiaohu's been really good. I actually think Xiaohu's been doing pretty damn good in their regional run. And a lot of people will say like EDG beat RNG. How can you say that RNG is like better or whatever? Now RNG's playoffs, they griefed. Xiaohu in the playoffs got absolutely stomped. Disgusting. And in the regional, I think he played fine. In the regional against EDG in the rematch, don't forget that RNG got reverse swept by EDG. RNG got reverse swept. So these two teams are actually a lot closer than people think, I think. I wouldn't be surprised if people keep them in the same tier. I wouldn't be surprised if people have this or if people have this. But do you think RNG is better?
Personally, yes. I think Viper is definitely much better than Gala, but there's still, I think the top side gap is too big.
Yeah, I'm not super sold on Flandre. I don't know why. Maybe I'm just a Flandre hater. Is it just me?
Maybe me too, man. I saw Dom 1 versus who won? EDG, right? Dom 1 EDG Worlds last year, and I was like, man, like if you watch back those pro views, I was like really not sold on Flandre, just on how bad both were playing.
Yeah, I'm looking at Flandre.
Maybe I'm a Dom 1 fanboy, so maybe that's a little.
Maybe this is why as well. I'm looking at Flandre. Like his last 2 or 3 weeks of LPL, he was just playing Renekton Gnar, Aatrox, Renekton Gnar. I don't know. He had one good game in the RNG series, but yeah, Flandre's Worlds last year was good, but he's never been that top laner where it's like, wow, this guy is insane, you know. But so I think I think he's still really good top side, and I think he's still a really good top laner, and he's still like top 6 best tops in the tournament. But I would favor RNG's top side as well. So then it comes to the question of like how crucial will bot lane be at Worlds, right? And if it does go to like a Kai'Sa Xayah meta, I think you can argue that RNG's bot lane will be as good as EDG's bot lane, you know? So I think both of them in A tier is fair. Would you swap either one of them out? Would you put RNG higher or EDG lower?
I mean, no, I think both deserve A.
See, T1 as well, to me, is a team where I'm not sure if they deserve to be in here. You know, if T1 had Kana at this tournament or any other top laner, I would put them in B tier right now. Or maybe even C tier, I don't know. But just because of their top jungle, I'm keeping this team in A. And a lot of people will say Keria is so fucking good. And I think you're right, Keria is so fucking good. But I don't think he was like the best support in the LCK. He was like fine. I think Lehens was insane this year. So I'll put them at the end of A tier. I actually think both LPL teams are better, personally. I don't know, Gumayushi I don't think their bot lane has been playing that good at all.
Zeus, I mean, I've been a fan of this guy since he was in Academy for T1. Definitely the best top laner in LCK, undisputably. Then second would be Doran.
Yeah.
I don't really rate the others that highly. Dove's more of the weak side. Sedge Ornn. I don't even know if he plays Sion.
So two big reasons why I think T1 is looking weak in this tournament. Their drafts their drafts just have sucked, and the way that they're drafting, it doesn't make any sense. They play like a different game to other people when you watch the way that they're drafting. And then bot lane's also been a big liability. When this guy plays Sivir, like he's not. I don't know. He can play Kalista or Sivir lane, like aggressive lane or defensive lane, and it just looks the same. Now spring split Keria Guma was sick. Spring split Keria Guma was sick. But the meta was just so much different back then. What was the spring meta? It was like Nautilus Tam, Thresh Renata or something. So yeah, T1 have two big problems. That's why I put them at the end of A tier. But they have a new coach, right? Bengi's their head coach. Thoughts on Faker? Faker's been fine. I think the meta will be good for Faker at Worlds, actually. Like a Faker is like the only mid in the LCK. I don't know if I don't know. I don't want to die on this sword, but he's the only one who's like playing Galio. I can't think of any other mid who's playing Galio. All right, so I think S and A tier I'm pretty happy with. You happy with S and A tier?
I am very happy with S and A tier.
Okay. It's B, C, D where shit gets complicated, and I think it becomes very subjective. So, like, what would your B tier look like?
My B tier, just because Dom 1 start players, I really like Dokdom and Kellen from last year. I think they really carried Nongshim. If they can get back to that form, I think Dom 1 is definitely high B. Maybe C9 is like last in B or high C.
I agree, actually, yeah.
The EU teams are fairly close for me. I don't know where I'd put them, whether it be in B or C or some in D.
Yeah, it's hard.
Mad Lions in the season split in the middle of the season was really dominant. I think many of their losses were just really bad throws, whether it be like a Baron throw, Baron flip, but like their lanes have been looking good. then, but now their form is so-so. I don't know.
Yeah, their form in playoffs was, I mean, it was just dog shit, right? Fnatic just destroyed them. They had like 1 or 2 good games, and that's it. Even against Rogue, I think they threw that whole series away. But I actually think Damwon is B tier. I think Dogtime and Kellen this split have been, well, this year have been fucking griefing. But you're right, like last year they were actually, like that's the reason they signed them, right? Like Dogtime and Kellen on Nongshim last year were actually just carrying games straight up. And it was, the meta didn't shift that much.
Weak side. I think their thought process was getting Dogtime for weak side. I mean, Zig, he was a big Ziggs player, and they go through Nuggery's carry tops.
Wasn't he also like a Varus player? When Varus wasn't meta, this guy would just pick Varus and just sit on his tower and queue waves from long range.
His Aphelios and Ziggs really stood out to me, and Ezreal, of course.
I was gonna say, yeah. So I think their bot lane is shit, but I've like the reason I put him in B is I have faith in their top side. Now I might look like a fucking idiot here, and Damwon probably won't even get out of groups. But I believe in Damwon's top side. I believe in like, I feel like there's players that you can look at, and when they get to a world championship, you know they will play good, right? And there will be no pressure on them, and they will just perform, right? You think of like Caps, for example. He's like an EU player who will just go to worlds and he will perform. Perks, Faker, like people who have been around. And I think Damwon at least have 2 people on that list. I think Canyon and Showmaker, when they're in form, this is a mid jungle, which is top 5 in the world, in my opinion. And when they're not in form, Damwon just collapses, right? So that's just how Damwon functions. I think Nuggery is on either side of that, where he will either perform or he will just look shit. And if he looks shit, Damwon's screwed. If he performs, I think Damwon can make a run to the semis. So yeah, Damwon's B tier for me. Like highest on B tier. C9. Now, I'm in this conundrum here where, I'll get back to C9 in a second, where Rogue and G2 are hard to rate. So I'm running into this issue where Rogue's bot lane is the reason that they were performing so well throughout playoffs, IMO. Odoamne had some good games, yes, but Malrang on early game junglers doing his thing, and in their bot lane were the 2 biggest reasons why I think that at Rogue won. Whereas on G2, their bot lane was never good. Like, never insane, or never their win condition. And in a top-centric meta, what do you value more? A stronger bot lane or a stronger top side, right? Even though one team might be better than the other. What would your C tier look like, Moxie? I say DRX for sure. Right?
I would. You wouldn't even. This is like out of your. You aren't even thinking of this. I'm putting Chiefs up there. I don't even. Do you know much about Chiefs?
No, I don't. I'll trust your word on this. You want to put Chiefs in C tier?
Yeah, Chiefs hasn't lost. I'm pretty sure Chiefs hasn't lost a single game. They went 27-0. They got Tapoon, who's a really strong topside, stable mid. Arthur, who played on HLE, but I think a lot of their macro gets carried by their support. Reyes is probably their worst player, but maybe I'll put him at like high D, low C, honestly.
Okay. No, I like that. I like that. Because again, I think it's very... I'll let you continue 1 second, but I think it's very easy to do a very standard list and like be safe. But I think that guesses like this or expectations are good. So if you genuinely think that OCE is going to be a C tier team, then we're putting them in C tier.
That's just my opinion. I think their top is really underrated. I think would maybe shock a lot of people with their performance at Worlds, or they could shit the bed.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of the LCO. I have no clue. I haven't watched any of these teams that are down here, so I don't feel very. I don't trust myself to put these teams here. And now maybe people will be like, "Oh, then why are you doing a World tier list?" Well, I'll do a play-ins tier list maybe in a week from now before play-in starts, and that's the reason that I don't want to put these tiers in.
Maybe I'll put them at high D, low. I don't know. That's just my wild.
We'll put them in D then. If you're unsure, we'll put them like high D.
I definitely wouldn't put them on E or F.
So I think the question is, do you think that this team, Chiefs, would be competitive against Fnatic, or do you think they would be competitive against G2? Which one are they more likely to be competitive with and actually beat?
Probably G2, just from their bot side. I don't really...
Okay, so you think they could go competitive against G2?
Honestly, at G2, I think their top laner and bot side might put up a competition. Their mid will be gapped, but I don't know. That's my opinion.
It's a tough one.
I mean,
I have no
I'm
idea.
Just saying, like,
I've never seen their games.
They are also playing in LCO, which is like, I don't think it's like the biggest thing to go 27-0, but it's still impressive.
We'll put them high D. Deal?
Yeah.
We'll put them high D. I don't know. I need to fix the C tier as well, because a lot of people, when I've seen their tier lists, they've put Rogue above G2, right? And I feel like it's obviously, I mean, it's really obvious, right? They won the finals, right? They 3-0'd G2. But going back to like the players at Worlds point, like saying that players will perform, like Caps and Jankos will perform at Worlds, right? Jankos didn't really perform in the finals, but at Worlds there's players you can rely on. And the way the meta is going to be in terms of G2 having a stronger top side in what I expect, because I'm dying by the sword that I think the Worlds will be a top-centric meta. I think there'll be Ornn, and then there'll be carry tops, and that's it. So that's why I'm kind of leaning in them being either even or G2 being slightly ahead. I think I need another tier in here. I do need another tier. This looks better to me. See, this is where I feel happier. See, now that looks better to me.
That does feel a lot better.
That does feel so much better, because I feel like there was way too many. The thing that it doesn't feel good though is because E tier makes it sound like this team is fucked and not doing anything, right? It just feels wrong. DRX is on like the end of C tier here. I think these are in order of strength, in my opinion. But I think C9 is looking really strong. I don't know about you, but I think C9 is looking really strong. I think C9 is one of my like dark horses to make like some crazy run. Oh, you're right. Oh my god, the chat is right. Why didn't I just do this? Wait. I should just do S plus tier and S instead of E. Okay, so how do we sort B out? C9, G2, Rogue, DRX. Would you change anything there?
Is this in order?
Yeah, I want to put them in order. Otherwise,
I
like,
would.
Throwing
I
them
think
in is not very...
I don't think I put C9 first, just off.
Oh shit, my doorbell rang.
Maybe. I said I wouldn't put C9 first, just solely off of the mid support versus these other teams in their rank.
That's a good point. That's a good point. So you would say like G2 would be higher up than them? Because that's something I was thinking about as well.
I don't really rate Jensen highly, and Sven's been mostly on Lulu, Yuumi, Berserker's been on...
That's a really good
Zeri.
point, actually. Yeah. How is Sven going to do without Enchanters? Because Enchanters are... I don't want to say they're gone, but I expect them to be gone, right? So I actually didn't think about that. How is Sven going to be on melee sports? Did he not play like a... Oh dear god. Okay, well he's played 3 games of Nautilus, a couple of games of Amumu, but other than that, he's mostly playing range supports.
And I like Targamas a lot more than Sven.
Yeah, same.
And obviously Caps over Caps over Jensen.
But Trimby is also a player where I think of range supports as well. Am I wrong in saying that? His Rakan is insane. I remember his Rakan being really good. But this year he's played... This is a lot of range supports. But like, it's the meta, right? So it's hard to just read into it. Like Hylissang is a player where you can say that he's not much of a range support player, right? He's more of an engaged support. But this is something that you could look at and be like, I mean, Trimby's Tom was good. But yeah, I think G2 is probably better than C9. Yeah, you're right. I would prefer Rogue over C9 as well then. Your point's kind of like...
If those points, Fudge over Odoamne and Blabber. Balrang over Blabber.
Yeah, I take...
And then Berserker over Comp.
Who would you take? Larson versus Jensen. I don't know who...
Larson.
I think Larson, yeah, for sure.
I don't really rate Jensen that highly.
I wouldn't even say Berserker over Comp. I know Berserker's insane, but I think Comp is also insane. I think bot lane is like kind of even. I don't know, IMO. But yeah, I think Fudge is like the one thing that I would say is better for C9. Comp's better than Berserker. I don't think Comp is better than Berserker. I just think that like it's like saying Viper and Gala, right? Viper is better. Yeah. In most cases, but there is cases where Gala can be better depending on like the champ pool, right? Like if Kai'Sa becomes better, Gala can be good. It's not like saying that someone's better makes the other one sound worse, doesn't it? Right? And like not worse, but bad. I think it's a better way of saying it. If I say Viper's way better than Gala, it makes Gala sound bad, right? And if I say Berserker's better than Comp, yeah, it's true, but it doesn't mean Comp is bad. I think Comp can easily put up a fight against Berserker. Berserker's been playing against LCS AD carries. Yeah, what's been Berserker's competition in NA in AD carry role? FBI and Denny?
That sounds about it. Hans has not been looking good at all, I don't think.
Like, he's played against a substitute AD, Hans, Danny, and FBI. See, a lot of people, I remember seeing this, I think it was the start of summer, a lot of people were saying 100 Thieves bot lane is the best, right? Or was the best. A lot of people put FBI Huhi like really high rated.
I put FBI high rated.
What is Europe's competition? Well, you have Upset, you have Comp. I think Unforgiven had a pretty good split, but he fucked up the playoffs. I think Patrick was done dirty. He is not a 6th place AD carry IMO. I think this guy was insanely good. He was smurfing. Neon was playing out of his mind, even in their losses. So you can say, what is EU's competition XD? But actually, EU's strongest role, I think, in playoffs was AD carry. Like, even in their losses, the amount of, like, This G2 series, where Neon almost single-handedly carried them to a victory. It was crazy how much he was doing for them. 35% damage game 1, 32% damage game 2, 52% damage game 3. Like, Neon almost solo carried them to like contest against G2. Patrick was playing insanely good in playoffs as well. EU's most competitive role was probably AD, which is quite shocking, I think. If you think back to how the leagues evolved in losing players like Reckless and Hans. So yeah, DRX is the one which I'm not sure about. Because DRX were the most inconsistent team in the LCK, like in the term teams that made it to Worlds, right? DRX had to use a substitute to win, which then they looked good with, but then they subbed out anyway. So what jungler is playing? Deft and Beryl are probably their strongest players, I guess. Am I underrating
Zika's
DRX?
kind of hit or
Zika's
miss
kinda-
for me.
I think he had a good regionals. What is Kingdom playing? I forgot what Kingdom was playing this bit. He was just playing Gnar, right? Yeah, Gnar, Ornn. Played a little bit of Jax, Aatrox at the end. I don't know how to get a read onto DRX, because I think personally, now I don't know if this is a controversial take, but I think Pyosik is shit. I just think he's really bad. Like, he did not adapt to the Poppy Trundle meta. Every time he tried to play them, he was terrible. His early games were an abomination. And then Yuhan came in and actually played fine. But this guy in their playoffs and their regionals, Pyosik, almost knocked DRX out of their own Worlds contention. So where would you put DRX? Where would I put DRX? I don't know, actually. Where would DRX go? With Yuhan, I still think they're bottom of B tier. DRX is kind of like Mad Lions. They start doing good, you want to believe in them, then they just always something always goes wrong. No, maybe not Mad Lions. What's a team that always does that? KT? Yeah, they're kind of like KT. DRX, KT, they're kind of similar, yeah. Fnatic, where does Fnatic go? Yeah, I'm tempted. I think they're top of C tier. Okay, watch the stream, ready? Yep. This is like a gut I have, okay?
Alright.
Am I EU biased?
I don't mind it. I don't mind it.
Okay, there's a lot of things wrong with it.
I just
Number
think
one, I'm EU
maybe.
biased. Number two, I think putting G2 over Rogue is a bit controversial right now. And number three, having Fnatic moved up to B tier, I think a lot of people will be like, what the fuck? But that's just a gut I have.
Upset Hilly, Humanoid, Razork, Wonder. I think I will take anyone over Razork in a lot of cases.
Really?
I think so. I mean, he's played well on Poppy recently. Like, you think back to like early in the season, I don't know. Those are just my opinions.
His Rogue series was not Razork. Like, apart from game 1, his Rogue series didn't look like, because he did get Poppy 2 games in a row. What happened in that series? Game 2 was where they ran back to Lucian Nami and they won, right?
And also, I haven't really seen Wonder on too many I usually see him on the Ornn or the Gragas, and I don't know how that will match up in Worlds.
He didn't. I think his other carry was like Gwen. I don't know if he played any Renekton. He played Renekton, I think, twice, but he didn't play Aatrox. Oh, he did play Aatrox. Yeah, he played Renekton twice. I remember their mad game versus Fnatic. Yeah, game 1. Oh yeah, the GP game. Oh my god. Yeah, Fnatic's. The thing is with the Fnatic Rogue series is I think Fnatic's drafting was just abysmal. Not abysmal, but their approach was just wrong, I think, in the way that they tried to contest Rogue. I think after game 1, they had a very clear way of playing the game. Like, you have Humanoid on an early game champ or a champ that can impact the map and skirmish heavy. You have Wunder on blind pick Ornn or force him on something like Renekton. And I think you'll be fine, because Razork was getting his early game champs. But the biggest problem they did was they started blind picking Aatrox and GP and just giving Odoamne Renekton or Ornn. And I think they fucked their top champs. Then they played mages mid for no reason. And bot lane was just, I mean, it doesn't really matter what happened in bot lane. I just think that they had a really clear way to win the game, but they just threw it all away. So I think Fnatic is actually not, I don't want to say they're not as weak as people think, but I think that they have the caliber to be better than what people think. So that's why I had like the bias putting them there, at least, because I think drafts was a huge problem for them in the Rogue series. And then in terms of like caliber of players that'll step up in international, plus the way the meta will go, that's why I went with G2 here. That was my logic.
Yeah, maybe a little EU biased. I don't know. I think of the star players on G2 and like, damn, dude, Caps, Yankos, Targamas has been playing well. I mean, Broken Blade has been alright, in my opinion. And then I don't know.
Oh wait, Vedius wants to join, I'll invite him.
If you put Fnatic up, I would put Mad Lions up then. But then I wouldn't.
What do you mean? Will you put Mad Lions to where? To B as well?
Well, I wouldn't. If you put Fnatic up, I would put Mad Lions up. In my opinion.
I was gonna put Fnatic and Mad in the same tier, or like Fnatic at the top of C and like Mad towards the bottom of C. I mean, I haven't really got to C properly yet, but that was like the idea I had. Oh yeah, I want to put Chiefs in C because you said so. All right, Vedi's here. What's up, Vedi?
I inherently, this is my opinion, of course, but I inherently have issues.
Every tier list is subjective.
No, I get that, but I get frustrated with the way in which people will rate tier lists and teams based on like individual players, when I think at a certain level, the difference doesn't matter. I would ask questions like, how big do you think the gap is between like a Faker and a Caps, right? Because in my opinion, the gap isn't that big. There are reasons why you can argue that Faker is better or Caps is better in different things. Why not? It's fine. But my question would be like, do you think that difference is significant enough that it could be game changing?
Right? Saying G2 should be next to T1?
No, I'm not. The thing that I'm trying to argue is that earlier you were talking about like Viper and Gala. It doesn't matter who's better, because the better player doesn't necessarily win. Like draft, jungle attention. Like if Viper is getting 4-man dived every game, it doesn't matter if he's better than Gala. In the same way that Upset, the whole argument and controversy around him is, oh, Upset isn't better. It's just that his junglers always play for him. And they're like, well, no, that's not true, because the way in which he carries team fights, right? And like, that's why Upset is one of those super controversial players.
I agree. Yeah, so, that's why I think, sorry, but like RNG, EDG, that's why I think RNG, EDG are close. A lot of people will think Viper is better.
Yes.
But I think overall as a team, RNG is slightly better than EDG. So that small difference in favor doesn't really matter.
Right. But my issue now with your tier list is that initially you came in with the argument that you are going to try and make it more predictive rather than based on current results.
Yeah.
But a lot of your arguments are based on how they're currently playing rather than necessarily their potential ceiling. Right.
Do you think so? Because
I think with some of them you are.
On that point, for example, right, I'm putting G2 above Rogue in recency, which Rogue beat them. I'm putting Damwon higher than they should be, despite them looking bad. And I'm putting Fnatic higher than a lot of people think they should be, because I think the reason they lost was very easily to fix.
Barnard says my favorite if my sprinkler goes like this.
What the fuck is this TTS? The only thing that's hard to change, in my opinion, from recency bias versus expectations is S plus and S tier. I think this is kind of... S plus S tier, I think, is kind of locked. I think a lot of people, if you do like a default tier list, maybe they would put Rogue near Damwon, then they drop G2 a bit, have Fnatic a bit lower, and then they'd have maybe C9 a bit more towards the end of like B tier, right? That's what a normal-ish tier list would look like, I guess, because I think, I said at the start of this, I think that this Worlds, it's kind of easy to do a tier list, because I think there is clear favorites in terms of winners of Worlds, teams that can contest the winners of Worlds. It's only A and B where I get subjective, right? And that's where I think my personal subjectivity comes from, like G2 being better than Rogue, looking at the meta. Damwon and G2 being A tier, even though they look bad, because I think it'll be a top-centric meta, and these two teams have bad bot lanes. But because they have such strong top sides with like Caps, Yankos, Showmaker, Canyon, I think at an international event, these two teams will do better than what they've looked like in their regions. And then I keep Rogue above C9, because like based on maybe, you know, C9 having a bit of a better bot lane, I don't think that's big enough, because I think Rogue's just a better team.
Well, I mean, you also have history. I think like G2 at MSI, of course, it was only best of ones and they got smashed in the best of three. But in the best of ones, they beat every team, and they were 8-0 versus EG, right?
7.
So like, no, it was 8-0, I think. Because they beat them 4 times in play-ins. They beat them 6 times in play-ins, and they beat them twice in the group stage, because the play-in stage that they were in was like 3 teams. So like, and this is the reason why I think it's also fair to have skepticism around Rogue, because, and that's the thing, it's mainly like, because I haven't watched all the VODs yet about international teams, so I'm not going to comment on like how good I think. Like, I think your tier list for the top end is pretty safe. I think 2 of these teams will collapse. 2 of these teams will underperform significantly compared to your expectations. And I also think it wouldn't surprise me if T1 at this tournament became S plus tier, and like a JDG became an A tier.
Oh yeah, easily, yeah. I think personally JDG could be like an A tier team on the spot if they don't perform. That's the only LPL team I would look at and say, I'm not sure.
Well, I will never forget was it 2019 or 2020 Worlds, the one that Damwon won, when you had Suning, Top Esports, and JDG, and everyone, literally everyone, me included, rated Kanavi as the best jungler at the tournament. We were like, if he's not the best, he's top 2. right? At worst, he's top 3. But like, he's insane. This man is incredibly good. And then he went to Worlds and he was mediocre at best. Like, he was incredibly underwhelming. His group stages did not look good. And he was not the reason why that team was even winning games. And like, that can happen, whether it be due to meta, whether it be due to travel. Like, historically, I remember, I think it was Frost who was telling me when back in 2019, you know, the Worlds that FPX won, one of the main reasons why they struggled in group stages and nearly got knocked out was because of like food. Like, living in Germany just really sucked for them. They couldn't find anything that they liked eating. And like, it was, like, it was crazy. Like, I remember, I'm pretty sure it was Frost that was telling me about how like some LPL teams would like bring care packages of food so that they had like reliable stuff that the players could eat and stuff that they liked. Because when teams travel, sometimes they're really like often Western teams love eating Korean food, Chinese food. Like there's a lot of food in the East that Westerners love, but it's not always the same the other way around. Like, and also like jet lag. As much as people love to meme it, going the other direction, because the East is they're 8 hours ahead of us, whereas going backwards can often be really difficult for people versus like going forwards. There's a lot of random shit that can fuck teams up in group stages. And in best of ones, it's that doesn't apply to Koreans though. Koreans are historically pretty good, and it's one of those things where DRX. I remember I didn't have a high opinion of who's that 4th Korean seed. Was it Hanwha Life? Hanwha Life. I didn't think Hanwha was very good at all. Going into Worlds, and like I thought that the teams would get out. What was that? That was the Fnatic group, right?
Yeah, I think Fnatic, they had a bit Hanwha. Of an. I don't want to say easy group, but I think they got a bit further than they should because of the group. I think like a Fnatic would have put up a bit of a better fight if they had. But
was NA in that group?
No, it was a wildcard team. I remember it was. Oh no, it was PSG. Oh yeah, it was PSG.
PSG was decent, right?
Yeah, they were. But how did they do in that group? I feel like they were next to Fnatic, weren't they?
Oh, it was RNG, Hanwha, PSG, Fnatic. Right. Yes. So, like, I didn't think Hanwha was that good.
Oh, they went 3-3.
But then obviously the Fnatic shit happened, which can happen. I don't expect it to happen again, but it can. Hanwha I didn't think was very good, but Chovy had an incredible group stage. Like, incredible. He was very good at Worlds last year. I think Deft was very good as well. Anyway, my point is that, like, teams can overperform and teams can underperform. And I think there's a lot of variability. But often I don't think that player skill often is enough as a gap. There are exceptions to that rule. I think back to the year where Khan solo killed Odoamne on like both sides of the Jax Graves matchup. And I was like, yeah, okay, that's just a top diff, and Rogue, you're just objectively worse than Damwon is. I think that was last year, right? That was the
that was last
Damwon,
year.
Cloud9 Rogue
afterwards, and then top was over.
Yeah, exactly. And like that's why I think it's fair to doubt a team like Rogue, because when you look at their ceiling, I think it's fair to be skeptical. Like, I think you would have more faith in an Inspired than a Malrang and a carry jungle meta that's all about Hecarim, for example, and that's fair. And I think Hansama had like the tournament of his life last year as well, right? That was where he was popping off on MF and he was 1v9 in games. Anyway, the only thing I wanted to say was I think that like some of the weight behind the arguments is X player versus Y player, when I actually think that greater value should be put into things like how flexible do you think this team is in draft? Because you commented on Fnatic's drafting. I actually think one of the biggest weaknesses they have going into Worlds is their limited champion pool. Razok only showed 3 junglers throughout playoffs. Poppy, Trundle, Sejuani. Yep. And when he was on Sejuani and he wasn't able to have another game impact, Fnatic looked very abysmal because it feels like that their laners, at least domestically, weren't strong enough outside of a few examples to just generate leads on their own. Humanoid solo killing Larson is the only like recent example I have of where their lane is absolutely done. Maybe upsets Hilly bot lane, stomped the Mad Lions bot lane, for example. But like aside from having their jungle impact their lane, the individual lane gap wasn't enough to make them win games.
Yeah, and I can see why you come in and you say it, because me and M0xxy were discussing like player versus player. But we were most of the time we're doing team centric. That's why we have like, or meta centric. But I think the biggest point that M0xxy brought up that actually made me do this player versus player idea was mid support in B tier specifically, right? So you take a Jensen and a Sven at Worlds when Sven's mostly been playing range supports, and you put it up against like a Targum as caps, right? And that for me was just a decider of like, okay, yeah, mid support, especially with the way the meta is moving, I think that G2 is just favored. And the same thing kind of applies to Rogue as well, where you say like Jensen, Sven, Lars and Trimby, that's the only one where it gets a bit complicated. And so we were discussing like mid support in terms of like how much impact they will have at a World Championship. And I think it's specifically C9 based because of the Enchanter situation, right? And how good Sven will be on.
But I also think that like one of the more controversial things you do have is T1 based on how they did play in the regular season, right? Like I think it's fair to say that in terms of strength of career, Genji, T1, Damwon is the order, but how close do you actually think T1 is to like an EDG and an RNG? Because I rate the LPL teams very highly. Yep. And I think if you use the ceiling argument, you're right. I mean, I haven't watched T1 extensively this split, but you're telling me that Carrier hasn't had the best split, and I'm going to take your word for that. But do you believe that he has the same ceiling that he had going into MSI, where people were arguing he's the best support in the world and may even be one of the best players in the world? Well,
I think the thing is with Carrier is based on expectations that I have of a player that's played so well in spring, I don't think he's performing at the level he was, right? So when I say I think he's playing bad, that means relative to what he was, he's not playing good. So basically, he's definitely still the second best support in the LCK, hands down, right? Doesn't really come close. He's still the second best support in the LCK. It's Lehen's him for sure. Lehen's, I think it's better. Some people might say Carrier is better. But then the question is exactly what you asked. How will Carrier play against the LPL teams? Now, I think a big reason why Carrier has been playing bad is because his AD carry has been playing bad. And as much as the lane is like 80% support, his AD carry is just making so many mistakes that it gets to the point where it's like, well, what the fuck am I supposed to do if I'm playing Lulu Yuumi? You misstep, you've lost both your sums, and now I just have to kind of stand here and I can't roam, right? So his impact is a lot lower. Whereas if you're playing like a Blitzcrank or a Not, and your AD carry makes a mistake, you can just cover him on one wave and just try to like make plays on the other side of the map, right?
My next question would then be draft, because the most common thread I see with T1 is their drafts are bad, okay? Yep. So Fnatic's drafts are often bad because they're limited in what they can play, at least based on what we've seen in playoffs, right? I think the most flexible player they have is someone like Humanoid, who can play both control mages and skirmishes, and like he has a very deep champion pool, but the same can't necessarily be said for everyone else. Or maybe it's that the players don't trust each other, or Yamato doesn't trust, or whatever. But in terms of what they bring to the table is limited. Would you argue that the same is true for T1, that their champ pools aren't necessarily that deep? Or is it just that they are objectively just drafting really badly and no one can really explain why?
I think T1 actually have some of the biggest champ pools. Like if you go across the roles, Zeus can play. I guess the only limitation you maybe have Zeus is like tanks-ish, but he still played Orin Sejuani. This guy can play every carry in the game. He's even played like Zac, Mordekaiser, Yone. He can play anything. Faker can pretty much play whatever the fuck you want from him. He's mostly leaning towards, I mean, you know from the last few Worlds, he's mostly leaning towards like supportive champs, right? But he's still playing like a lot of Azir, Corki. He can play what the fuck he wants.
Yeah, I mean, Faker's I would expect him to have a deep champion pool, yeah.
And carry, I mean, this man plays Lee Sin support, right? So I think their champ pools are fine. Maybe you could argue that AD carry, they have a small champ pool based on how well Gumayushi will play, right? There's like
that's always
champs
going to be
gated by
the meta anyway. So,
yeah, there's limited champs where Guma will play well. And I think they're pretty fine overall. I think T1 is, they just make, like even the way that they draft, they just let through so many power picks because their read is just wrong, and they think that they have these counters to them, which when they get to like an R4, R5, they realize they're not counters and the game's just lost and they have to win the game in 5 minutes. And,
right.
And they think like blind picking certain champs. Like for example, T1 never played Poppy Trundle. They didn't. They just didn't play it. Even though Owner is a really good Poppy and he's a really good Trundle as well. But they just thought that Wukong is just the best champ in the game and that they can counter Poppy with Morgana. And that's it. But if you actually look at their playoffs run, they just didn't play Poppy, and they either gave it thinking they could counter it, or they had to double ban, and it just looked wrong. But then you look at the games when they play Trundle, and it looks great. You know, their Damwon series, they play Trundle, instant win. Oh, they're gonna go up against Genji. Oh yeah, we can pick Vi here. We can go into game 2. Oh yeah, we can give them Sejuani or whatever, and we'll play Morgana. Oh yeah, we can blind pick Yuumi and let them play Singe. Like, they just fall into every team's trap for no reason. And it doesn't make sense what they're doing.
Okay, interesting. So it's almost like they try to like game the system and then they end up only gaming themselves.
They think that they will play their own meta, and giving them meta champs doesn't matter because their meta will just counter it. And it doesn't.
You sound quite passionate. I respect it.
He does.
Yeah. Did you watch much LCK, Moxie? Did you watch the playoff?
I watched. I think I might have missed some playoff games, but I watched a lot of the season.
In regards to T1's drafting, or would you?
Yeah. I don't really have a different take.
Did you know Moxie is based as fuck, and he watches almost every region, including URLs.
My mental capacity cannot handle watching every single region, so I respect that.
So yeah, the reason I sound passionate is because it pisses me off, right? Because I think T1 can be really good. I don't care that their AD carries inting, because the rest of the players are just so good that it doesn't, like, they can still compete against Gen G. There's no world where this team goes against Gen G and gets 3-0'd. But the way they drafted, they should just get 3-0'd, even if they have 5 fakers. I just want them to see them lose. Like, it's not fun. Like, you fuck Zeus over the whole series. You don't draft good junglers. So what are your thoughts, M0xxy, on the tier list so far? You had a really base take that like slapped everyone in the face, where you said Chiefs should be B tier. Now I've restricted
I don't know about B tier. No.
But I've restricted that to C now.
Yo,
Leo with the 50!
B tier earlier.
Oh my god.
Now, like, C tier is fine. Honestly, I've been watching a lot of their games from the LCO, and LCO teams are not as strong, but the way they play out the game, macro, is really solid, and their players are good. They might have a few weak links, but they are good, stable players.
Yeah.
And I think it could shock people. I mean, could be wrong, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah. The only
they did go 27-0.
Yeah, in my experience, the problem often with play-ins teams, the first problem comes with, we talked about like player difference and how big is the gap. Often play-ins teams have that issue where the player gap is too significant, where a single lane can decide the whole game. And then let's say that they do then get the players that can compete. You then have the next issue, which is like mid-game and like how to transition. Like, we got a lead, now being able to cleanly transition this and turn it into a win against especially major regions. These teams, the second that you like drop the ball or like give them an opportunity to stall or they find a window, they're much more likely to punish these small mistakes than domestic leagues from play-ins. So if you have like confidence in their ability to not only compete on the individual level, but then also be able to like use a lead and actually convert it into a victory, I think it's fair to have faith. Especially when Mad Lions have failed to qualify from play-ins before.
Just a hot take. That was just my little wild card.
I'm just gonna move Fnatic back up. Yeah, I put Fnatic down there as an example, so don't over read it into it. So someone DM'd me, and this is what triggers me about people sometimes, Vedius. Someone DM'd me and linked me an OPGG solo queue match history and said this is why Guma will be fine against Ruler. And it's just a 4 day ago solo queue game where Guma wins against Ruler in solo queue. Just one game where he goes 19-3 and Ruler goes 3-8 and he wins a solo queue game. It says this is why he'll be fine. So stop linking me this dog shit. And don't base your opinions off of one solo queue game.
Based. Hang on a second. You say that Bo's gonna be really good because of his soak, I mean, there's difference between
sample size, isn't there?
Is there? I don't know, bro.
Don't start this. Bo's had competitive games. He's had super server games. He's had EU solo queue games. Like there's a lot more evidence than just
kettle. You know what I mean?
Who have you beaten solo queue? Have you beaten any pro players in solo queue?
I beat you in a 1v1 once.
Boom. There you go. Yeah. I have 100% win rate against Caps on stage in mid lane.
Nice.
So I'm better than Caps. And then Caps won MSI, so I've won MSI. And then Caps also beat Faker, who won 3 Worlds, so I've won 3 Worlds as well.
Wait, but then that would mean I would win Worlds 3 times.
Yeah, so that means M0xxy is like a 15-timer.
Damn, we got a bunch of world champs in here.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen a lot of people put DRX above G2. And I haven't watched enough DRX to have an opinion on them. So, like, I was confused as to why people were doing that. But also, I know that Korea always does well in Worlds group stages, both in play-ins and in groups, typically. So, I can't really argue against them. The stats don't really lie.
I mean, we're looking at a Worlds where there's probably going to be one Western team in knockouts at best. Maybe 2 if we're lucky. Let's be honest. Thoughts?
I mean, what did I tell you earlier in the year? 2 teams quarters, 1 team semi. That was my prediction.
You said 2 teams quarters, 1 team semi. Yeah. I mean, worst case, no Western teams make it. And what happens is DRX is the one that takes G2 spot in this example here, and then it's just LCK versus LPL. And hopefully it's not a fucking civil war where they both eat each other themselves alive on opposite sides of the bracket. And you have like
I will tell you one other thing. So the other thing that can fuck your tier list, right? Because you know that what's going to happen is that the moment groups is over, people are going to bring back your tier list. And the second that something doesn't quite line up, people are going to be like,
don't worry, Vedi. At the start of the year, we did an LEC tier list. Rogue was in C tier, and Fnatic and Vitality were in S. I've already been down that road.
Wait, did we do that? Is that what I did? Wasn't
I did
on
with
that?
Maybe you were on it as well.
Okay. Oh, my food just arrived.
So,
but check it. I'll be right back.
I'm not a stranger to I did tier list as expectations, and then someone comes back 2 months later and be like, "You're so fucking stupid. How could you have thought that?" But in the moment, it seemed right.
And then the same people, they're like, "Dude, so true, so based."
Yeah, they are.
Wait, that's super true. No, the other thing that can fuck your tier list is how the groups themselves could make teams look better or worse. So, for example, G2 and Damwon are in the same group, right?
Yeah.
So, in theory, G2 could look like an S tier team if they look really good against Damwon and are competitive against JDG. But in reality, they might not actually do that.
That's the problem with the strength, because the format will never allow you to see the actual relative strength of the teams properly, right?
Correct.
It'll just allow you to see which team gets out. So, for example, if I don't know what's an example of teams getting out of groups that like maybe other teams could have gotten out of their group instead, you know, like what are the groups? Let me open them up.
There have definitely been years where, like, if the group, I think 2017 Worlds.
So you have C9, T1, EDG, JDG, G2, Damwon. All right, let's take Group D, for example, right? Where RNG is probably going to go in there. You have Gen G and RNG, right? And Gen G and RNG get out of the group, as we expect, right? So you have Gen G and RNG getting out of the group, right? And then let's say JDG and Damwon get out of the group. Who else would get out of T1, EDG, and CFO based, yeah. And then what's the other group? Top Esports, Rogue, where I don't know who goes in that group. DRX, right? We'll say
DRX, yeah.
Do you think DRX will make it out? Okay, so basically in these group stages, in these teams are going out. Now this is not as strong as example as like teams like Albus for example, or maybe the Hammer Life last year. But basically the problem with the format is you can't really tell if a team getting out of their group relative is stronger relative to teams in other groups that didn't make it out, right? So let's say DRX makes it out of this group with Top Esports and Rogue. Is G2 better than DRX? You know, we don't know because they're knocked out of their group from JDG and Damwon, right? But we don't know if the 4th seed from the LCK is better or worse than the 2nd seed from the LEC, right? We know that the 3rd seed's better, but we don't know if the 4th seed's better, right? So relative, it's very hard to figure that out. So when it comes to tier lists, you might have teams above other teams, right? But then they just don't make it out of their group, but the other team does, and then they just look better because of results. That's just how tier lists work in a
So have you seen the Valorant format by any chance?
It's fucking fantastic. It's just
so there are some drawbacks. There are some drawbacks to it.
Doesn't matter.
In that, like, yeah, but so for example, right now, let's just take G2 as an example. G2 plays a minimum of 6 games at Worlds, right? Minimum, which isn't a lot, but a tournament often is that way. You can look at a bunch of different tournaments, and especially in group stages. In the Valorant format, there's a world where G2 could play at most 4 games because they could just lose 0-2, 0-2, right? Arguably, though, do you remember you and I were having a conversation the other day about representation versus quality?
Yeah.
Right? Like trying to make the World Championship the best League of Legends possible versus making sure that every region in the world is represented. One of the great things about this format is that, like, it can provide representation, but it can also very quickly get you to the best teams already because of the group stage and how it plays best of 3s. But the other thing about Valorant is it still keeps, I think it's top 8. Yeah. So you still wouldn't actually know if, let's say we take the Damwon. Here we go. So who goes into that group? JDG, G2, Damwon, and who goes into that group?
JDG,
would it be
a wild card or an EU team?
The way this seeding would work is JDG would probably be considered the best, seed 1. Right? Because they're in pool 1. So pool 1 would go against pool 4, and then pool 2 would go against pool 3, right? That's how their system would work. So JDG would win, and let's just say Damwon wins, right? JDG, Damwon, they both make it through. Those two will then play another best of 3 to determine who gets out of the group. And then again, if we're just going based off poolings, JDG win, so Damwon gets knocked down, which then means that maybe let's just say G2 win, and then you end up with a G2 versus Damwon best of 3 to determine who gets out of the group. And then you get to the double elimination stage. But you still don't actually find out how G2 compares relative to the rest of the groups. If they had lost there, or if Damwon had lost there, like if they had just gotten a slightly easier group, then perhaps they would have gotten out, and then they would have had access to the double elimination. So like those are the only 2 small drawbacks of that format.
So this was really dank. I'm just going to say on behalf of the chat, that was very dank. So basically, TLDR, I guess, is if you finish third in the group, you play a best of 3 to determine if you can get out or something, right? You basically have like a second chance. And it's more of a reliable result because you play more of this the best of 1. But yeah, the Valorant format, sick. Worlds format, sucks. But next year, Prage together, everyone's hands, send your energy. Riot Games will change it. Surely, right? Surely they won't do another Worlds of best of 1s, right? And surely we won't get another MSI of 55 best of 1s and then 3 best of 5s. Surely not. Just Prage, yeah? Prage. That'll fix itself and change, and we'll get a better tournament. I'm happy with my B tier. C tier is where it gets hard because you have Mad 100 Thieves, EG. I just don't know how to separate these teams. I guess it also depends on whether EG has their 80 carry or not at Worlds. Do we know? Is Danny going to play?
Don't believe
think
so.
He is. Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one, dude. I think, honestly, my opinion is, I think it's a bit of a stretch to put Mad Lions over a team like 100 Thieves, at least based on results. Like, I understand from our EU brains why we would do it. I think it's a little hard. I think you have to kind of put 100 Thieves over Mad Lions. Mark, I know your EU brain. I know, I get it. But what you're arguing here is that the 4th seed from Europe is better than the 2nd seed from North America. That's what you're arguing.
I am arguing that. So what?
Well, I think that it's a little ambitious, I think. Especially when 100 Thieves, like, we've never seen them play against an EU team.
I'm going to say it. At least I think
Mad Lions haven't won a best of 5 this year, okay? They haven't won one, dude.
I think NA, now this is a very, I don't know if this is based, but it's true, I think. Now, I think that NA is a 1-region team. That sounds bad, but I actually think that their 1 team is actually really, not a 1-team region. Yeah, a one team region at Worlds right now. But I think that their 1 team is actually really strong. Now, I put them below Rogue, but I would not be surprised if C9 get out of the group, actually. Because I think C9 are probably one of the best teams that I've seen from NA over the last few years. Now, it sounds bad for me to say that they're a 1-team region. Oh my god, Dan's game. But let's not forget that C9 destroyed 100 Thieves. And wasn't 100 Thieves playing against EG substitute AD carry? And they almost lost. They went to 5 games, right? So
that series was more about JoJo than it was about AD carry.
Yeah, for sure. But the point stands that I think, even though I maybe did C9 dirty here, I think C9 could get out of their group. Now, the tier list doesn't reflect that because we already had this conversation about like teams getting out even though they're weaker than other teams and overperforming, underperforming. I think C9 could overperform at the Worlds. My 3 dark horses for Worlds right now is Damwon make it to top 4, C9 make it out of groups, and RNG win the whole thing. There's my three like maybe not expected takes, I guess.
Yeah, I mean the inherent problem that you have for both Cloud9 and if Fnatic get out, Fnatic would be that both of them would have to knock out one of the S tier teams.
Yeah, so C9 would have to knock out. No, C9 doesn't have to knock out an S tier team. They have T1.
Yes, they have to knock out. Who's in S tier right now?
Yeah. I thought you meant S plus. I was thinking S plus. But yeah, they would have to knock out an S tier team. C9. I mean, that's
or Fnatic.
Or Fnatic. Which group? Fnatic goes in Group A, right? As well.
A. Yeah. If they get out of group, I think. Yeah.
I don't know if a wild card can go in that group. If EU goes in that group for sure, right? Yeah.
All I'm saying,
just if they don't make it out.
The group that we won, okay, because this can happen. I think. Yeah, no, it can. G2 and Mad in the same group. And then both get out.
Holy.
That's the true. That's the true one take. That's euphoria right there.
EU euphoria at its best.
What is your take on M0xxy? How are we doing? Give me an NA opinion on an.
Oh,
EU
NA
region.
opinion.
No, not in a toxic way, but like an outside opinion. You're not biased like us.
On this tier list.
Yeah, just in general, how EU.
I think generally a lot of the EU players that are pro are better than a lot of the mid-tier NA. Like they're mid-tier EU, greater than mid-tier NA. But I think NA has some player picks and talents, and that teams can be stronger depending on a certain draft and playing for certain lanes. What is my opinion on the tier list with this? I mean, I think it's fine compared to EU and NA where they're placed.
Yeah.
I really think you should put 100 Thieves above Mad.
I'm not putting 100 Thieves above Mad. It's not happening. I'm not doing it.
They haven't won a best of 5 this year.
Yeah, I don't care. I don't care if I'm biased.
Okay. No, let's talk about this objectively, right? How does 100 Thieves play, more or less? What is their typical approach when coming into the game?
I mean, it's really hard to say approach. The thing is, the approach.
I mean, well, so okay. Let's start with Mad then. Let's start because Mad as a team, when we identify how they approach the game, typically mid laner on a Roma, he likes to basically push and move a jungle, right? And if he can't push, then jungle support come mid, help him push, and then they leave, right? So like Nisqy is not the player that wins his lane. That's not his job. That's not how he plays. He purely plays for his team. So if a player like Abadage, right, wants to pick a Zia, what Nisqy's going to do is pick Talia, and he's going to say, bye, Abadage, I'll see you later. I'm going to go murder your top lane. So that's their general approach to the game, right? Yep. Which the great thing about that playstyle is it's like very meta-proof in a way, because unless there are mid laners that are so OP that don't allow you to roam, like we've seen players like Caps even roam on a Zia, right? So like that playstyle inherently will be meta-proof, and you can sit there and the biggest problem you can argue for Mad that if it does become a top lane focused meta, do you trust Armut to be able to 1v9 games? Which I think is a fair question. Well, so right? Especially when you look at a player like Someday, who apparently is like, I think he was in the conversation for MVP.
No,
like, apparently Someday's was he? I thought Someday had a really good split.
Oh. So from what I understand, what I've seen, he's underperforming. We were having this discussion earlier about top lane. His playoffs was bad, and Impact and Fudge were just outperforming him.
Oh, you're just saying
his regular split was good and his playoffs was bad. Something like this.
Oh.
His regular season was good and his playoffs was bad. I think it was that way around, right? Am I right? His playoffs was bad?
Same split, bad playoffs. Okay. No, I wasn't saying Someday was really good.
He was an Aatrox one trick in playoffs.
M0xxy, do you have an opinion on Someday?
Third top laner. Aatrox, Ornn, pulled out the Fiora. I just hope his champ pool is much flexible than it's shown to be.
Do you think he has a small champ pool? That's why you rate him, or like
I
when we're
rate
discussing
him lower,
it, you think that he's
for
lower
that
than
reason.
Lower than Impact Fudge. Okay, so
yeah.
What I was gonna say, the reason I think that Mad is better than 100 Thieves is because I think their identity is much clearer in how they play the game, and I think that if I go into a world championship, right, and I have people like Elyoya, Kaiser, Nisqy, I can rely and I will know that they will find a way to play the game properly and play the game to the point where we can actually contest against top teams because they have the caliber to do it, right? And they have the flexibility to do it. I think Elyoya, Kaiser, even though Mad is like, what did they finish? Fourth? Fourth. I still think they're jungle support mid.
Regular season, but
I still think their jungle support mid is at a level where they can actually contest against top teams, right? And I think they should make it out of play-ins. And their liabilities against a team like 100 Thieves are not as weak. Like, for example, like 100 Thieves' strengths would not... I don't know why I'm matching this as like a Mad Lions versus 100 Thieves as if they were playing against each other, but I'm just doing it for the sake of the argument. So I think the biggest weaknesses for Mad Lions is obviously their top laner is quote-unquote weak. And if their mid laner can be weak if he doesn't get the ball rolling, right? If you actually watch the way Mad Lions play, if they can't get plays early, you'll see Nisqy sitting under his tower and the whole fucking map is falling apart, right? Was it the Nocturne game he was playing against Fnatic where he was just against a Victor or against Rogue or something, where he was just sitting there getting blasted because they couldn't do anything?
Yeah, but that's because I think top died and then they invaded top blue and then he ulted and then they lost. And so they lost early and then they went to shit, yeah.
Yeah, it was against Fnatic, game 1. Yeah, that was the defensive Nocturne ult in their blue side jungle, right? Where the Fnatic won the top side fight. And then they ganked mid or ganked bot afterwards. Anyway, I think Mad's got a pretty clear way to win the game.
Sure.
And you know what you're going to get out of Mad. And as much as like they are their own worst enemies, I feel like they have the aggression or like the caliber to actually contest. So you think of their Rogue series, they play through bots really hard and they actually do it really well. They actually execute through bots super fucking well. They can play through mid to side really fucking well. And I think having that strength at an international, especially in a play-ins, where I think if I was saying who would get out of play-ins first, Mad or 100 Thieves is probably a better way to say it, I would put my money on Mad. And the reason for that is because you brought up a good point earlier where play-ins, lane caliber, it won't apply at the top or in groups or in knockouts. Like lane diff is a thing in play-ins, right? RNG lane diff. And I think lane diff is where Mad is the reason I would attribute Mad to getting out. Because they will just play, their mid-jungle will just dive your bot lane if they take a bad trade. And in play-ins, they're very likely to take a bad trade. Whereas in a group stage, it's very unlikely that Gala and Ming or Viper and Mako will take a bad trade to the point where you can actually execute something on it, right? When someone does a mistake on the map, it creates a hole, and you need to close the hole as the losing team, and you need to like open the hole as the winning team, right? So when a bad trade happens, the whole map plays around it, right? Top's ready to TP to cover, or top's playing aggressive on your side, stop their TP. Bot lane wants to stack a wave, jungle's already been called, mid trying to fix his wave, right? Everyone's like, the second something happens bad on the map, the whole fucking red alert siren is going. And I think Mad is going to be quicker at teams to react, to like punish these things. than a team like 100 Thieves. But I think when Mad get to group stage, they're going to fall apart probably. Yeah, they're probably going to get demolished. I don't know what group they go in, whether it's group A or B, but they're probably going to lose because they will not get that opening that they will get in play-ins. The only issue you have in play-ins is there's a chance that Mad play a best of 5 against RNG. And if that happens... Oh, not RNG. What is the other side? Who is it they play against? Fnatic or DRX, right?
Mad's in the good group. Mad is in the good group.
Fnatic,
because Mad is in a group with RNG and DRX. So let's just say... Let's say things go the way you expect them, right? So RNG finishes first, DRX finishes second, and let's just say Mad finishes third or fourth. Mad would play against Saigon Buffalo, who would be 3rd/4th.
Yeah.
And then they play best of 5 against the second seed in the other group.
Oh, so Mad's in a great group.
Mad's in a good group. And Mad also has the ability to upset, right? And if they finish second, so let's say it's RNG, Mad, and then DRX 3rd, 4th, right?
Yeah.
Then what would happen is Mad would play the 3rd/4th from the other group. So they would get to play against it could be a DFM or an Evil Geniuses. The only thing that can really fuck things up for Europe is if Fnatic finish in second, in which case if Mad then finish third, you have Europe eliminating Europe already.
Yeah, so going back to my original point of people might be asking, why am I comparing Mad in play-ins to 100 Thieves in groups? Now, the reason is because I think 100 Thieves and EG are very close in caliber. Maybe 100 Thieves is slightly better, but I think that the way you look at that best of 5, the fact that they struggled against, M0xxy was a Jojo Pune, right? The fact that they struggled against an 80 sub, right? When they've had like a week of practice. I feel like, especially when you go to 5 games, they're at a similar caliber. So let's say you're placed EG in play-ins with 100 Thieves. Do you think that it would be a drastic difference in them getting out of play-ins?
You mean if Mad and 100 Thieves would have played best of 5?
No. If 100 Thieves basically replaced EG in play-ins.
Oh.
I don't think it would be
I would have a lot more confidence in 100 Thieves, yeah.
You'd have...
Well, I mean, let's imagine... losing Danny, I think, is very significant for EG. So I don't know if your example is the best. That's why I put 100 Thieves. Like, I know it was a close series, but in my opinion, 100 Thieves is a better team.
Maybe I'm basing my logic of recency bias for this one opinion at least, but that's how I feel. I personally think EG would do better in play-ins than 100 Thieves, my opinion. Especially if they had Danny. It's hard for me to get my point across, but hopefully I did it in a way that makes sense by like comparing and contrasting how a playstyle can affect your standings and strength at an international based on the ramp up of teams that you play against, right? I think that Mad Lions' playstyle is strong against weaker teams and bad against stronger teams. But because they have this playstyle, they would do better than 100 Thieves. And I think that's why but they're very close. That's why they're in the same tier list.
Your logic is fair. However, when Mad Lions get knocked out of groups and play-ins, I'm not going to say I told you so. Okay.
Dude, Fnatic and Mad are not getting out. I know it already. I know exactly what's going to happen. We're going to get knocked out in play-ins. We're going to get knocked out in groups.
No. Fnatic's going to end up finishing like... What's going to happen is... What'll happen, right, is Saigon Buffalo will finish second, okay? And then RNG will finish third. Okay, and DRX will be top of the group. And then RNG will have to play against Fnatic because Fnatic will lose a game to Beyond and they'll end up as the second seed. So RNG will knock both Mad and Fnatic out. That's what will happen. Bruh.
If that happens.
Because the problem is, the worst thing about play-ins is it's single round robin best of ones. So you get one shot.
Yeah, I haven't really thought about the format that much.
Yeah, like play-ins is lethal, okay? And like that was the whole LGD. Do you remember? It was LGD. Yeah, it was LGD. It was 2020, I think.
Was that with Peanut?
Yes, and they nearly got kicked out of that fucking group.
Yeah.
They finished play-ins like 2 and 3, and then Mad finished underneath them, I think, at 1 and 4.
Yeah, that was LGD Peanut. I remember that.
And Elgoya was on that roster, I'm pretty sure. No, he wasn't. No, I'm lying. He wasn't on that roster. That was Shadow. No, that was Shadow.
My tier list is almost done. I'm just gonna write my things down. I'm gonna put
RNG. The other teams
though. I've already said that CFO, Saigon, I haven't watched their games yet. And like the Plains teams, I haven't watched either. Because I'm not doing...
And then Gigabyte Marines, I'm assuming. I don't know how much of them you've watched.
Here's my 3 takes on top of this tier list. So take with a grain of salt. RNG win the whole thing. Damwon make top 4. C9 get out of that group. I think C9 is actually probably one of the best NA teams that NA has sent to Worlds in a while. Even though I put them on B tier. What we say? Yeah, so Saigon I haven't watched. CFO I haven't watched. And I haven't watched any of the Plains teams because... Well,
what about Gigabyte Marines?
My holiday in the States, I didn't decide to go to Mexico. Okay, I decided to actually book my holiday a little bit later so I could stay in Europe a bit longer. So I could shove it on a bit more, you know what I'm saying?
What about the Marines?
Yeah, again, haven't seen it. But they're in play-ins, aren't they? No, they're not.
No,
they're in Group C, aren't they? Do you have any takes on them? Because I'm happy to move them around.
I haven't watched any VODs yet, mate. I've been on holiday the last week.
M0xxy, did you watch any Plains teams?
I'm kind of familiar with Saigon and BYG, but I can't put them comparatively to the others.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll keep this tier list saved and update it soon with after watching VODs of GAM and CFO specifically, because they're in groups. But
so
from what I've heard,
yeah.
So from what I've heard, Gigabyte Marines is A or B, and CFO is B or C. That's what I've heard, and SGB is up here somewhere as well. But that's just me taking other analysts' opinions. So yeah, I guess what my tier list will probably look like, based on the amount of people who are saying the same kind of thing, is GAM will be here somewhere, and CFO will be here somewhere. That's basically what it would look like. And Saigon would be here somewhere as well, most likely here, and CFO here, or something like this, and then GAM towards here or here. That's basically what it would look like.
So this is done, right? You're done with your tier list?
Basically, yeah. The only reason I put
now,
or this is the M0xxy base take, and I'm on the M0xxy base take train. The Chiefs are not too shabby.
I mean, I'll put DFM B tier, just so that we're clear.
Yep. This is okay. So just for context, this is Vedius from now on. Okay, my tier list is done. I'll just screen and upload, and you can do your thing. Okay, DFM B tier.
Yeah. So my tier list, right? So DFM. Actually, no. We'll put DFM in A tier. We'll put G2 S tier. Put Rogue S plus. We'll kick JDG out because they're going to collapse, obviously. Yep. So we'll put them down to B. Let's assume that Cloud9 get out over EDG. So we'll put T1 in S. We'll put Cloud9 up in S as well.
Yep.
And then EDG can go down to B as well. What's the other group? What have I got? Dam1, G2, JDG. Oh yeah, so JDG is getting kicked out. So that means the G2 and Dam1 are getting out of groups. That's fine.
What about your real tier list? What would your real tier list look like?
I mean, it's not that different from yours, and I haven't watched all the regions enough to actually
I'll put mine back to where it was, and then you can just say if you have any things that you would change around.
No, I really agree with your Rogue G2 take. I feel bad for Rogue because I know it really frustrates Odo because he's like, what? We literally want to split, and you guys still aren't going to give us any credit.
I also feel bad for my NA takes a bit as well. Because it's hard, and the reason I think that people in general, analysts from specific regions are more biased is obviously they know the teams a lot better, right? I can pull up 100 Thieves VOD and watch their series against EG and form my opinion, but recency bias strikes. I watch their playoffs, and then all of a sudden I don't really watch their regular season. I don't know what they're fully capable of, right? So that's why my argument versus 100 Thieves Mad Lions was obviously more Mad Lions based and very little 100 Thieves focused. Because the only real things I've watched of 100 Thieves is towards the end of playoffs, right? And maybe I'm wrong, and maybe there's other things that I'm missing. But my opinion on Mad Lions is much stronger to the point where I feel more reliable on certain aspects of the way they play the game versus what I've seen from 100 Thieves in a couple best of fives, right?
Well, this is inherently what it is.
It's very normal
when it comes to Worlds.
It's very normal that an NA analyst maybe puts 100 Thieves here, right? Or an LCK analyst maybe puts DRX up here.
Often when you do a tier list, ideally what you should be thinking about is the ceiling of the team, right? What is the team capable of? What is the potential? We always talk about it, but the meta always changes so dramatically from playoffs to Worlds that you have to think about what a team could achieve in that time. If you don't have as much experience, if you're only basing your opinions off of their playoffs, especially if all they're doing is losing and they qualify, it's going to skew your perspective, right? So our experience of 100 Thieves is they get 3-0'd and then they had a close 5 games. And those are the most recent VODs that we're going to watch and base our opinions of 100 Thieves on. And that's just not going to be the complete picture. Whereas Mad, a lot of people are just going to watch them lose 2 best of 5s. And one of them was close and then one of them was a stomp. So Mad Lions had the same results as 100 Thieves, no? Or at least when you look at their last 2 best of 5s, Mad Lions went to 4-5 games, 100 Thieves went to 4-5 games. And then Mad Lions get 3-1, 100 Thieves get 3-0'd. In terms of their result, and that's purely just the results, they're actually very similar. I would get why people want to rate Mad Lions the way that they do. But I also think it's the same case with teams like Fnatic. One of the biggest strengths that LPL teams in particular have is not only are they often incredibly flexible in draft, but they're also not afraid to be flexible. One of the most standout moments to me was RNG last spring. I think it was spring, where in game 5 to determine who would win, they locked in Jax as an answer to, and the pick was just so smart. It hadn't been played all series long. And it was so significant in the outcome of the game. That type of thing you just don't get really anywhere else in the world. Like players willing to just do something different because they think it makes sense. And like another great example is the Soraka from Rogue. You speak to Trimby and he's like, I asked him, have you ever played Soraka Callisto before? He said, no. Yeah, he said that's the first time we've ever played that combo.
Same thing with Tom Kench. Like, the Tom Kench R5 on Euphoria, he said he hasn't played it in months. Wasn't even sure if it was a good pick. The only thing he could think of. Yeah. And he even wasn't sure if it was the best pick now looking back.
But this is what I mean. I think a player's willingness to do that is super important in a best of 5. Being willing to be flexible and be like, I think that this pick is good here. I think it makes the most sense. I think is super important. And like that Soraka ended up defining the series against G2. They didn't have an answer to it at all. The fact that you could let Yuumi through and say, we have an answer to it that gives us lane prio and just as much scaling as you, go ahead, pick your Yuumi.
Yeah.
Like it was, but stuff like that I think is really valuable. And that's why I think that Rogue should be given a little bit more credit. I get where the criticisms come around with like players of Road to Omni, especially when you look at last year's Worlds where he did get top gapped, and like you can criticize Larsen's champ pool too, and like especially when you compare him to Caps, but also a lot of people didn't expect Rogue to win 2 best of 5s against both Fnatic and G2. So I think Rogue is being underrated a little bit. I think Damwon's being overrated a little bit. I also think that T1 is going to be super hit or miss at this tournament. They're either going to be really fucking good or they're not, but it's a flip. I don't know which one they'll be. The only team I really have faith in, weirdly enough, the teams I have the most faith in are RNG and EDG. Top esports and JDG, I don't know.
Someone links me this tier list and they say, what do you think? Mate, all you've done is you put, like, I can see what you've done. Actually misread it a bit. I thought you just put all 8 Asian teams at the top, basically. But I guess I see what you're saying. You're saying that there's a big gap, aren't you? There's DRX, and then that's basically how good EU and NA are. They're as good as DRX.
Yeah, I get that opinion.
Yeah, and I think that'll be genuinely. I think this is actually one of the most common opinions going into the tournament.
Like Jack made a great point on his podcast where he said that like in the year where the first proper year we had 4 LPL and 4 LCK. The LPL didn't get their 4th seed out because they lost the tiebreaker to Mad, which for anyone that's watched that game recently, that was like a 49-minute game where Mad was losing and then they crawled their way back into it.
Yep.
And then the FPX collapsed, obviously, but then the Hanwha Life, they stomped their group. And obviously, again, there is the caveat of Fnatic collapsed as a team. Yeah, it's one of those things where I wouldn't be surprised if the 4th seeds are much closer to the top teams than you think. Well, I mean, everyone seems to think that the 4th seeds are closer. So,
I mean, wait, what? That was 1st and 4th seed, right?
Mad LNG was 1st seed EU versus 4th seed
and almost
LPL.
Lost.
And they almost lost.
Yeah, it basically said.
Yeah, that wasn't a good year for Europe. Like Mad barely scraped out of groups. Rogue lost the tiebreaker to Cloud9. Admittedly, it was Perks. I remember that. Do you remember that LeBlanc game where he single-handedly carried and almost lost, single-handedly threw? And then we drew, Mad Lions drew Damwon, which is the other thing that pisses me off. Because when you look at G2, you know the super team roster of 2019 and 2020?
Yeah.
G2 only ever lost, so they lost to FPX, which is obviously the World Finals. But then the year before, they lost to the eventual World Champions of Damwon.
Yeah.
And from what Grabs was telling me at the time, he was like, if we had gotten Suning based on scrim results, they were like 65-70% win rate against Suning. And I would have loved a lower bracket. Imagine
lower
if G2
bracket!
got the run back. Would have been great.
Yanko said
and
the
then
same.
They could have made another World Finals, which they then would have lost to Damwon. But it doesn't matter.
It doesn't, because then you get a lower bracket and you get more best of 5s at Riot Games.
That would smile. That would have been so fucking good. Yeah, and then like Mad lost to Damwon, who ended up being in the World Finals, and it would have been great to see Mad versus some other team in the best of 5, maybe. You know, thoughts?
Yeah. Basically, the TLDR of this entire
TLDR,
tier list
change the format.
Yeah.
You know what? Yeah, there's another thing I will accept. A format change has to happen, but if they don't want to make a significant one, if all they want to do is add a lower bracket to like top 8, right? Then the compromise is they just give us another international tournament. Make it 3 instead of 2. Thoughts? It's a fair compromise, right?
Yeah, fine. Or just like outsource to like IEM.
Keep play-ins. No, let's calm down now. Keep play-ins, keep groups, just add lower brackets, top 8. Job done. And then gives
no, I think longer tournaments is better.
Yeah, but you want like a 2-month-long tournament of 70 teams.
Yeah, I would true and based. Okay, I'll put these teams in here because all the teams are missing them. So this is just for context, if you're watching this as a VOD or on stream, I'm just putting these in and I'm basing it off other analysts' opinions. Now, that's a very weak statement, but a lot of people are asking me why they're not in here. So I'll just put them in here based on where everyone else thinks they're going to be, because these two teams are also in groups. There you go. All right, well, thanks for the Worlds discussion, boys.